Are you a beginner in HTML and CSS looking for a practical video tutorial that is going to teach you how to build and deploy your very first beautiful website? Then this video tutorial is the perfect video for you. In this step-by-step practical video tutorial, I am going to walk you through how to create your very first modern responsive website and put it online for everyone around the world to have access to. Throughout this video, you are going to learn how to use CSS variables, CSS positioning like the fixed position, and more. You are going to learn how to use Flexbox and the grid system to align elements on your page. We are going to make use of some very important units like the rem, viewport width, and viewport height, percentages, fractions. And these units are very important when it comes to building websites that you want to be responsive. And that means when it comes to building website that you want to look good on different devices like mobile phones, tablets, and laptops, these units are going to help us easily customize the website to match the screen sizes of all these devices without needing to have any other different websites for each device. And as I said, I'm going to take you step by step on how to build this beautiful website from start to finish. And I'm going to make sure I explain everything at a beginner's understanding level. There's going to be a multi-page website, and that means we are going to have multiple pages as you've seen in the demo. And although I'm going to take you from start to finish, I'm going to walk you through every step of the way, I at least expect you to know what HTML and CSS is. If this is your very first video on HTML and CSS, then maybe you're going to find it hard to understand some things, but it shouldn't be bad, or it shouldn't be a bad video for you to understand how things work when it comes to building a website using HTML and CSS. Although 99% of this video is going to be HTML and CSS, I'm going to sneak in just a few lines of JavaScript to make some function, just one function of the website work. Okay, so there's going to be 99% HTML and CSS. Once we are done creating this website, we can go ahead and upload it or deploy it to our hosting so that it can be available on the internet. So let's go ahead and buy our hosting and claim a free domain name. Let's go ahead and set up our hosting and domain name. And having used or having worked with many hosting providers, the one that I always recommend for everyone is Hostinger. Now in the description of this video, you are going to find a link that's probably the first link that's going to bring you to this page, and that's an affiliate link that's going to give you the best deal for your hosting purchase. Okay, so go ahead and then click that link. That's going to bring you to this page. And if you visit this page and the design is a little different, that's because it changes from time to time, right? So there's Hostinger. Let's go ahead and then check out some of the hosting web hosting packages that they have. And right here is their premium shared hosting. Okay, so for only $2.80 per month, you are going to have, or you are going to be able to host 100 websites. They give you 100 gigabytes of SSD storage, as you can see here, free weekly backups. They give you free domain name. How cool is that? For most of the hosting providers, you actually buy the domain name separately. Okay, here they give you a free domain name and a free email as well. So they give you a bunch of other stuff that are very cool and very helpful as well. Right, so this is a perfect deal for me. I'm going to go ahead and then click add to carts, and as I said, make sure you use the link in the description to get the best deal on Hostinger. All right, so this is very affordable, so I'm going to go ahead and then use the 48 months. Okay, and that's going to give me the best deal. And right here, I'm going to go ahead and then enter my email. Right, so that's my email. I'm going to use PayPal. As you can see, my total is $133. Okay, now I have a coupon for you. Okay, and this is the best coupon on Hostinger. Go ahead and enter the coupon code EGATOR. Okay, that's right here. Enter that and apply and see what you get. You get 10% discount. So that is a very cool deal, and this is a very reliable hosting. That is why I went ahead and then got you this very important deal. All right, so we are going to go ahead and submit our secure payment. All right, so after the payment, make sure check out your email to finish up everything, confirm your email and all that. And right here, I'm going to go ahead and then log in. So right here, I just logged in and I'm going to go ahead. As I said, they give you a free domain name, so you can go ahead and then claim the domain, okay, which is really cool. On most platforms or with most hosting providers, you actually have to buy the domain name separately, which will cost you probably $10 or more, right? So the domain name I'm going to buy is Dami EGATOR, and I'm going to use the .com. Okay, so let me quickly check if that's actually available, and it is. Okay, so let's go ahead. As you can see here, that would cost me $14, but here they are giving it for me. They're giving it to me for free, which is really cool. Let's go ahead and then claim this domain name. Yeah, I forgot to mention, but they give us a free SSL as well. So let's go ahead and install that. Yep. And that's installing. And that's going to make sure every traffic on the website is secure. All right, so now let's proceed to work on the project. Now let's go ahead and create a folder for our project. And I'm going to call this folder build and host. So instead of the space, you can make it hyphenated, or you can just leave them as spaces. It doesn't really matter. All right, so let's enter our project here, or you can just right click on it and then open with VS Code. There's the text editor I'm going to use, right? So you can double click the folder you just created and then open the folder with VS Code, or you can just right click on the name of the folder to open it with VS Code. So here in VS Code, let's go ahead and then create our folder structure for the whole project. Right, so first of all, we are going to have our home page. There's going to be a multi-page website, and that means we are going to have different pages for different things. So for instance, we are going to have the about page, the works page or our work page, and then the contact page as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and first let's create our home page. And the home page is going to be the first page, which is the index page that loads when a request is sent to our server. Okay, so when somebody visits the domain that we claimed, there's going to be the first page that loads. That's the home page. Okay, so to create a home page, we are going to call it index.html. Okay, it is an HTML file, so make sure you have the .html extension. The index means it should be the first page that loads when someone visits our website. Okay, now let's create a CSS file for this as well, and you can call it whatever you want really. It doesn't really have to be index, but I'm going to call it index. And let's get into our index HTML. But first, I actually want to have all the folders and the other files for the other pages that we need before we actually proceed. Now, when we get to the media queries, we are going to have a little bit of JavaScript to make sure we can toggle our menu on small devices, on phones, right? So with that, I'm going to have a JavaScript file here as well. That is in the project folder, directly in the project folder. So go ahead and create a JavaScript file. You can call this whatever you want. People usually call it app.js, but I'm going to call it main.js. Okay, so we have our HTML file, our JavaScript file, and our CSS file. Beautiful. And this is mainly for the home page. Okay, now the JavaScript file, of course, can be linked to any page that you want, but basically we have everything for the home page here. Okay, now let's go ahead and I'm going to bring in some assets that we are going to need for this project. So I'm going to create a folder here called assets, and I'm going to bring in some images that I have here. So I'll just select them all and then drag them into the assets folder in our project. Okay, so we have some GIF here, we have a header image here, and some images here that we are going to need for our works page. So that is for our assets or the images we are going to need for this project. Now let's go ahead and create the structure for the other pages as well. And to make this clean, I'm going to go ahead and create a folder directly in our project folder here. I'm going to create another folder and call this about. And inside the about folder, I'm going to have about.html. So there's the about page. And I'm going to create another CSS file for the about page. Okay. Now the index.css is going to have the styles for the home page mainly, but also we are going to have some general styles and some general classes that are going to be needed for the other pages. Okay, so the about page or the about HTML is going to link to the index CSS, but we are also going to have about CSS, which is going to have some styles specific to the about page. We are going to understand this when we are actually working on the pages, but now I just want you to know the reason for these structures that I'm having. All right, now let's create another folder directly inside our project folder here, and that is going to be our contact. So inside our contact, we are going to have contact.html and another file, contact.css. Right now, directly in our project folder again, I'm going to have another folder. Sorry, it shouldn't be in the contact, it should be in the main project folder, and there's going to be works. So a folder called works, and inside this folder I'm going to have works.html, so our HTML file and our CSS file, works.css. And this is all we need for our project. Okay, this is the structure for our project. All right, so to begin with, of course, we have to work on the home page. Let me close all these files and then open the index.html file. Let me make this bigger so that you see everything clearly. If you're using VS Code as I am using here, then there is an extension that comes pre-installed in VS Code called Emmet. And with Emmet, I'm actually going to close all these so that we have a very simple look here. And with Emmet, I can go ahead and do exclamation tab or exclamation enter, and it's going to give me this basic HTML boilerplate. Okay, so we have our doc type or HTML opening and closing tag. We have our head tag and our body tag as well. We have our meta, which has the character set to UTF-8, and we have our meta tag for responsive design as well. We have our title, which we can go ahead and have our own title. So I'm going to say how to create your first website and put it online. So that's going to be the title for my project here. Okay, very basic. All right, so we can go ahead and actually there is an extension that you can install so that instead of you going ahead locating your project, for instance, you come here, you locate your project, and then instead of you clicking the HTML file here and making sure you refresh, of course you can see we have our title here, right? So if, for instance, I come back to my project and then I write anything, I have to save it, come back to the project that's in the browser, and then refresh it before I can see the changes here. Instead of this, you can go ahead and install a plugin called, it's a plugin here that I want to show you, Lifesaver. Okay, so you can go ahead and install this plugin, and once you have this installed, you are going to have this right here that you can go ahead and click, and it is going to open this project in your default browser. Okay, so I closed the project that I opened manually, so let me open that again. I'm going to double click. All right, it's been opened. So this is what we have using the live server, and this is what we manually opened. Okay, so let's go ahead and make some changes again and see what happens. I'm going to have an H1. Okay, so with image you can do H1 and then tap, and it's going to give you H1 tag. Okay, so hello world. We save this, come back to our project, and you can see this automatically reloads our website for us. Okay, it refreshes the page for us, and we can see the changes right away. Okay, but for the manual way, you have to come back here and then refresh before you can see the changes, which is something I never want. So I'm going to just close this setting, stay with the live server auto refresh. Okay, so that's what we are going to use. And of course, we should go ahead and connect or link our CSS file to our HTML file here. Okay, so to do so, I'm going to leave a comment here. I'm going to leave an HTML comment here and say custom CSS. And to link your CSS file with Emmet, again, you can go ahead and do link or type link and then tab. It's going to give you this, and then you can go ahead and then link your CSS file or your style sheet. So since the style sheet is a sibling of the HTML file, I can do / and then get the style sheet, and that is index.css. That is my CSS file. All right, so we have our CSS linked here, and now let's go ahead to create our homepage, and we are going to start with our navbar. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that right here. So for the navbar, let's go ahead, and I'm going to have that inside a nav tag. Now the nav tag is an HTML5 semantic tag, and as you saw with Emmet, you can just do nav and then tab, and we are going to have the nav tag. We are going to have a div with a class of container. Okay, now to do this with Emmet, you can go ahead and have a dot right away and then have the class. Okay, a class is an identifier that we use to target the different elements in CSS. Okay, so we are going to have a div here, but we want to be able to target that div. That is why we are going to give it a special identifier called container. Now this container class actually is going to be a general class, and that means this class identifier is going to be used on different elements on the page. But also we are going to give it a specific class. Okay, this div is going to have another specific class or a more specific class called nav__container. Now you're going to understand this as we move on, especially when we get to the CSS part of it. This is going to be a general class, but this class, which is the nav__container, although it is on the same div element, is going to be more specific to the navbar or the div inside of the navbar. All right, we are going to understand this more as we move on. Now inside this div, we are going to have an anchor tag or a link tag, which is going to link to the same page that we are working on right now. That's the index.html. Okay, so we have that, and inside this we are going to say home. Okay, so on click of this link, we are refreshing the page basically. So we have that, and this is going to be our logo. I'm actually going to give this a class of nav__logo. And this style of naming classes is called BEM. Okay, block element modifier. You can go ahead and read more about it. Right, so we have our logo. Now let's go ahead, and we are going to have our nav menu as a sibling of this logo. So let's have a menu tag, which is also an HTML5 semantic tag. And I'm actually going to give this a class of nav __ menu. And inside the menu tag, we are going to have some more links. Okay, so the first one, actually the logo is going to say EGATOR. Okay, this is the logo, is going to say EGATOR. In the menu, our first link is going to refresh the page as well. So we are going to link to the same file, but it is going to say home. Okay, so we click on the home and then this page refreshes. Okay, now let's duplicate this a few more times, maybe 3 more times. We are going to have about, which is going to go to the about page. Now to locate the about page, we have to go into the about folder and then slash the about HTML. Okay, so we have that. So dot slash, we go into the about folder and then we locate the about HTML. Okay, so the next one is going to be the works, and the last one is going to be the contact. Okay, so for the works, of course, we have to go into the works folder, and inside that we are going to have the works.html file, and we have to do the same thing for the contact as well, just like that. Okay, so we go into the contact folder and then we get our contact.html file. Of course, now we don't have anything in those files, but we are going to get there. Right, so if we come back to our project that is inside of the browser, we come back and then we check it out. That's what we have. So we have our logo right here, and then we have our nav menus. So we can click to go to the about. As you can see, it navigates to the about file or to the about page, and there's the contact. But since we don't have anything on those pages, we can't really see anything when we click on them. Right, so the last thing I want to have in the nav bar, okay, that's a sibling of this nav menu, is going to be 2 buttons, and those buttons are going to be needed when we get to the media query or the responsive design for small screens. Right, so to achieve that, or to get the buttons, we are going to need some icons, and we are going to get those icons from Iconscout, which is a library I use to get my icons. Okay, so you visit iconscout.com and we need some icons. I'm going to click on unicorns. I'll scroll down and then get this link right here, and then come back to my HTML, and I'm going to paste that. Okay, the link I just copied, and I'll leave a comment here. I'm going to call this Iconscout. Okay, that is what I have. All right, so now we have a link or a CDN for our icons. Okay, so now let's get back to Iconscout and search the icon that we need. So let's go to Explore Library. I want the free, that is the line. So I'm going to click on line and then search menu. All right, so I need the bars icon that we have here. I'm going to select that, and let's have a button tag here, and I'm going to give that a class of nav __ menu open. Okay, and I'm going to paste the icon that I just copied right here. I'll just paste it in the button. All right, below that I'm going to have another button. So we have 2 buttons. One is going to be for opening the menu on small screens, and the other is going to be for closing it. Okay, so let's search close right here. This is good. I'm going to get this, come back to my project, and I'm going to say nav, or I'm going to give it a class of nav menu close. Right, now let's paste the icon inside of it, and this is all we need for our nav bar. Okay, this is all we need for our navigation bar. All right, now I've taken my time to explain everything just so you understand exactly what is going on. So let's go ahead and get into the CSS so that we can give this some style. And first of all, let's see what we have on the page so far. So we have everything. We have the logo, we have the links, that's the nav menu, and then we have the two buttons that has the icons that we copied from Iconscout. Right, so let's go ahead and give this some styling. Before we move on to specifically styling our navbar, there are some general styles that I want us to have, which are going to help us along the way. It's going to make our lives very, very easy. Okay, we are going to clear some default styling that comes with some elements, and we are going to have some general classes as well. Okay, or we are going to style some general classes which you are going to make use of or need along the way. So first of all, we are going to change the font that we have here, right? The default font that we have doesn't really look good for me, so we are going to change that real quick. Actually, let's do that right now. So let's go to Google Fonts and get a new font for this project. And if you've been watching my videos for some time, you probably know what I'm going to use. I'm going to use a font called Montserrat right here. So I'm going to click on this and get this font. Okay, so there are two ways to add our font to our project. The first way is to copy the HTML links and then paste it in your HTML head, and the other way is to use the CSS link. Okay, you import the CSS link right here, and I think the best way for this project in particular is to use the CSS import link. Okay, so you can go ahead and copy this link inside of the style and then paste it inside your CSS file. And the reason why I'm using this link instead, that's the CSS import instead of the HTML, is because this CSS file, that's the index.css, is going to be used on every other page. Okay, so it's going to be used, or we are going to link it to the about page or the about HTML, the contact, and the work HTML as well. Okay, so we can have it here only once, and then the font is going to apply for all the other pages as well. Unlike the HTML, which we have to copy all these links, come to the HTML page, the index page, we are going to paste it here. You will have to go to the about page, that's the about HTML, and then paste it here as well. We come to the contact, which is a whole bunch of work, too much work, right? So I think it just makes sense to do it once here and then link the CSS to all the other pages so that this works for all those pages. All right, so now that we have this, of course, we should copy this and right here we are going to target the body and say the font family should be Montserrat and a backup of sans serif. Okay, so if the Montserrat wasn't able to load, any sans serif font should load in its place. And as you can see, we have a different font right here. That's the Montserrat font. All right, now there are some default styling that come with the elements. Okay, so for instance, every anchor tag or every link has an underline. As you can see, they have some default color as well. Every button has a border with some default background. List items also have bullets by default and a whole lot. Okay, so to get rid of all those default styling, we are going to target every element on the page. That's even for every element that we are going to add to the page later on in the future in this project. We are going to target them all and give them a margin of 0. That means we are going to remove the margins that is available or that comes with them. We are going to zero out the padding as well. I'm going to set the box sizing to be border box. For instance, if we add a padding in the future, a padding of 1 rem all around an element, we want that padding to be included in the width of that element instead of extending it one rem more. I hope that makes sense. Okay, you are going to understand this more as we progress, or even you can experiment with it. You can create an element, add a padding, and you add the box sizing of border box, and then you remove the box sizing as well. Then you see the effects of the box sizing. Okay, now as I said, for the underlines, that's with the links or the anchor tags, we are going to say text decoration. We are going to set that to be none. Okay, I'm going to set list style to be none as well, and that's the bullets that come with our list items. Okay, so we are going to have some list items on the pages. That is why I have that. I have the border of any element set to be none as well. So as you can see, the border that was on the buttons have been zeroed out. I'm going to set the outline to be 0 as well, or none. Okay, so that's all we need to zero out the default styling that come with some elements. Okay, now to make our lives more easier, what we are going to do is have some CSS variables. Okay, some CSS root variables. And what are CSS root variables? Well, they are variables just like in any other language. So for instance, we can have some colors set as variables. So the color primary that we have here is going to be a hex code of 0A4A3F. Okay, so this is our primary color that we are going to use throughout the project. And the purpose of this is just so in the future we want to change the color, we can come back to our root variable here, change this unit or this hex code, and all elements that use this variable, all those elements are going to be updated to the new color or the new value of the variable. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Just like using any other variable, this is just very intuitive. Okay, now we are going to have another variable of color primary variant, and that's going to have a hex code of 4CA193. And now we are going to have some gray colors. The first one is going to be color gray 0, which is going to be pure white, and that's FFF. And I'm going to go ahead and paste the rest. So these are the colors that we are going to use for the entire project. I'm going to have some few more variables, some few more root variables, and this is going to be the container width on large devices. It's going to be 74% on large devices, and the width on small devices is going to be 92%. Okay, and also I'm going to have our last variable here, and that's the transition. I'm going to say all 350 milliseconds is right, so that we have a consistent transition throughout the project. Right, so these are the root variables that we will need for the entire project. And now we can go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and give our body some more styling. The line height for our text is going to be 1.6. I'm going to have a background of the variable color gray 200. So to use any variable, you have the var method or the var keyword, and then you have your parenthesis, that's your opening parenthesis. You have your variable right here. So in this case, color gray 200, and then you close your parenthesis. Okay, now the last thing I'm going to have in the body is going to be the text color for our text, and that is going to be color gray 300. All right, which is this. So this for the text color, and the background is going to be the DA-D7CD. Okay, so for instance, if I come here and I change this to be red, let's see, you can see we have red for the background of the body. Okay, so that's how you use CSS variables. All right, now let's move on to have some general classes. Okay, some general classes that are going to be needed for this project. I'm going to have a comment here. And I know having these general classes and these general styles may seem boring, but it shouldn't be boring to you guys. This is very important to make your life easier. And once we have this, styling any elements on the pages are going to be very easy. Okay, so let's go ahead and have some more styling here, or some more classes here. Now in the HTML, that's in the nav, if you can remember, we had a container class right here that I said is going to be general, and that means some elements or multiple elements are going to use that same class. Okay, so let's have that class, that's the container class, and have some styling for it. Now the width for this is going to be the container width LG, okay, which I think is 74% right here. I'm going to give it a margin inline of auto, and that's margin on the x-axis or on the horizontal axis. Okay, so as you can see, we are having some changes. Okay, some things are happening on the browser or on the page already, and that's because of these two styles that we have for our container class. That's our general container class. Now we are going to have some btn class as well, a btn class. So anything or any elements we want to look like a button, we are going to have a btn class on that element. So let's go ahead and style this class. Let's give it a width of fit content. Okay, so the width is going to fit the content of that element. We are going to display the element to be inline block. We are going to give it a border of 2 pixels solid and a color or a border color of color gray 0. That's FFF, or the white color. We are going to give it a padding of 1 rem for the top and bottom and 1.5 rem for the left and right. Let's give it a font weight of 600, and I'm going to give it a color. That's the text color in the button is going to be color gray 0 as well. That's FFF, or the white color. Let's give a background of transparent, so any button or any element with this class is going to have a transparent background. It's going to look clickable, so we are going to give it a cursor of pointer, and also we are going to have a transition on almost all the buttons. So let's give it a transition, and I'm going to use the variable transition that I have up top. So that is right here, or 300 milliseconds ease. Okay, so the duration is 300 milliseconds for the transition. The timing function is ease. You can do ease in, you can do ease in out, you can do ease out. There are so many timing functions, and the property that we want to style or we want to transition is all. So any element that changes should be transitioned, right? So for instance, every btn that has a hover should have the background changed to the color gray 400, so the black or the very dark color that we have, and the text color should be color gray 0, if that makes sense, right? But then I'm going to have a btn class with another class of primary on the same element. Okay, so in that case, I want the background to be the color gray 0, and I'm going to have a text color of color gray 400. Now let's move on, and I'm going to have some styles for my images. All my images should fit the width of its parent element. So the width is going to be 100%. Same is going to be for the height, 100% as well. They are going to be displayed block, and I'm going to set object fit to be cover. Okay, and that's for our images. Let's move on, and I'm going to have some styling for our headings. So we have h1 to h6, or even we can do only h5. And for these headings, I want them to have a different line height instead of the 1.6 that I gave to the body. So line height is going to be 1.1 for our headings. They are going to have a margin bottom of 0.5 rem, and rem is a very responsive unit. That is why, if you've paid attention, I rarely use pixels. Okay, I rarely use pixels in my videos. I mostly use percentages, rems, viewport height, viewport width, just so the websites are easily customizable. And you are going to really love this rem when you mostly build responsive websites or responsive designs. Okay, so you can read more about rems, so just so you understand it more. But for now, let's move on. I'm going to have a color of color gray 400 and also a font weight of 400. Okay, so that is for our headings. So for the H1, let's have a font size of 3.6 rem, and 1 rem is 16 pixels. So in this case, 16 times 3.6, that should give you the value in pixels. I'm going to target the H2 and give it a font size of 3 rem. Let's do the H3, and that's going to be 2.5 rem. Let's target the H4, give it a font size of 2 rem. Let's target the H5, give it a font size of 1.5 rem. And lastly, the H6, which I don't think I even used, but I'm going to target that H6 and give it a 1 rem font size. Perfect. And these are the general styles that we need for the entire project, guys. These are the general classes and the general styles that we need for the entire project. All right, now we can move on to the navbar and make sure it looks good. Okay, let me go ahead and copy the comments that I have here. And I'm going to use that for the navbar. Great. Let's target our navbar, and since we didn't specifically give it any class, we can go ahead and target the tag. Okay, so let's target the nav tag, and this is going to be the only nav element in the entire project, and that is why I didn't even bother giving it any identifier or class or ID to target it. Okay, so let's target our nav and give this a background color. So we can just say background, and we are going to use our primary color for the background. So that's the variable primary color that we have up top. Let's give it a border. Let me actually save this. So this is what we have. Perfect. Let's give it a border bottom. So a border on the bottom. It's going to be 2 pixels solid, and let's do color primary variant. Okay, so the variance color, and if you can see, let me increase this a little bit just so you can see. If I make this 12, you can see we have a border bottom, okay, for our nav. And the only reason why I'm using pixel here is because this border doesn't really matter when it comes to responsive design. Okay, I don't care about this border for responsive design. That's the only reason why I'm using pixels. But for any elements that I want to make responsive, I make sure I use either either rem, viewport width, viewport height, or percentage. Okay, but of course you can go ahead and make this, like 0.2 rem, which is a little too big, but it makes sense if only you want to keep everything in the rem unit. Okay, this is also cool. All right, now I'm going to give this a width of 100 viewport width so that it fills the entire page or the entire window of the browser. Let's give it a height of 4 rem, I'm going to save. I'm going to give it a position of fixed. It's going to be 0 from the left and 0 from the top as well. Now, since we have the position set to fixed, we are going to have some elements that are going to scroll over it, okay? Or the z-index for some elements are going to go above it. And to prevent that, we have to make the z-index for this element higher. And so I'm going to make it 9. We can make it 2, even 1. It's okay, but 9 is perfect too. Beautiful. Now I'm going to display this to be grid. Just so I want to position the direct child, in this case the div, with the class of nav container. I'm going to position it directly in the middle. That's horizontally and vertically. It's going to be positioned directly in the middle. So I'm going to say display grid and place items to the center. Okay, let me show you what I'm talking about. So let's go ahead and target the direct child of the nav. That is the nav __ container. And if you could remember, I told you guys this div, which is the direct child, we are going to give it this class. That's the nav __ container to make it more specific to be selected. Okay, so here we can go ahead, target that, and give it a background, just so you see what I'm talking about. I'm going to give it a background of red, and you can see that this is actually positioned well here. Let me display this to be flexed so that the elements align well. As you can see, this is positioned well in the center of our navbar. Okay, so vertically and horizontally, this is well positioned. Okay, and this is what I want, right? That's why I displayed the parent to be grid and then set the place items to be center. Okay, I hope that makes sense. All right, I don't need the red color. I just wanted you guys to see what is happening. So I have a display of flex in the nav container. I'm going to justify content to be spaced between. I'm going to align items here to be center as well. Perfect. All right, now let me target the logo. You know, we had an anchor tag or a link tag with a class of nav __ logo, and that had the EGATOR text in it. Let's target the nav logo, and I'm going to give it a font size of 1.6 rem. So it's a little bigger. It's not very visible. So let's change the color to be color gray 0, which is the white color. Now we save and we have this. Perfect. All right, now we have our nav menu here, which we are going to target in a minute. But these two buttons are not going to be needed here. Okay, on the live screens, they are not going to be needed. We are only going to make use of them when we get to the small screens or the responsive design, right? But for now, we can go ahead and target them. So nav container and then the button or the buttons. And there are two buttons in there. So we can target them and give them some styling for now. So the background is going to be transparent, font size of 1.8 rem, and a color of color gray 0, which is the white. And let's see what happens. So this is what we have, but as I said, we are not going to need them right now, so we can go ahead and display them now. Okay, so now we basically have only two elements in the nav container. We have the logo and then the nav menu. Okay, these two buttons that we have been displayed now. So virtually we have only these two elements. Okay, that is why they've been spaced out, one on the left, one on the right, because of the display flex that we gave it and the space between as the justify contents. I hope that makes sense. All right, so now let's target the nav menu. I think we gave that menu a class of nav menu right here. So let's target that. So the class of nav __ menu, I'm going to display flex, align items to the center, and have a gap between them. Okay, a gap of 3.5 frame should be cool. Okay, so you can see we have that, but of course we need to see the links well. So I'm going to set the color to be color gray 0 and the transition to be the variable transition that I have up top. And now that's what we have. Okay, and I'm only giving it a transition because I'm going to have a different style for a hover effect. As you can see right now, if you hover, nothing happens. I just want the color to change a little bit. So let's get this. And on hover, I want the color, that's the text color, to change to be color primary variant. Okay, so now if we hover, we have a cool hover effect. Okay, which is perfect. Now, one last thing I'm going to have here is, we are currently on the home page. Okay, but what shows here in the nav menu? What shows that we are on the home page? Maybe we could make this home button bolder, and maybe we could have a different color for it as well. Okay, so to have that, I'm going to have that's nav menu A with an active class. Okay, so I'm going to put an active class on the page or on the link that corresponds to the page that we are on. I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to make the color primary variant, and the font weight is going to be 700. Okay, so we are currently on the home page, so it will only make sense to put that class on the home link, so a class of active. And now this is what we have. Perfect. So this is all for our navbar, and as you can see, the variables that we had, the general cleanup class, the cleanup styles that we had, and some few things that we had in the general classes are helping us really speed up with our styling here. Okay, and this is what you need to learn how to do, how to extract some different styles and make them general classes so that you can just reuse them on different elements. All right, so that's for the navbar, and now we can move on to the next section of the home page, and that is going to be the header section. Okay, so let me actually leave. I'm going to have a comment here. That's if you even need it. This is going to be the navbar, or this is the navbar. I'm going to have some full stops here to make it more clearer. I'll just copy this, come down here, and this is where we are going to have our main header. All right, now the main header is just this part of the page. Okay, so the very front section of the page that is going to cover all this page that we have here. Okay, so we're actually going to divide it into two, whereby we have an image on the right side here and some text contents and some call to action buttons on the left side. Okay, so that's the structure that I will be having. And so let's have a header tag. There's also an HTML5 semantic tag, and I'm actually going to give this a class of main header. Okay, let's have our general div container class, and let's have another class specific to this header, and that is main header __ container. Right, now I'm going to have an article tag with a class of main header __ left. So this is the left side that I was talking about. I'll duplicate this using Shift Alt and then a down arrow, and this is going to be the right. The right side is only going to have an image. So let's have image tag here, and let's go into our assets and get the header PNG. Okay, with the alt, I'm just going to say header image. So that was for the right, and for the left, that's where I'm going to have the text content. I'm going to have an H1, and I will say build and host your first website. Basically, that's the title. And I'll have a paragraph tag with lorem 12. I hope there's not too much. And below this text, I'm going to have a div with a class of main header left CTA. Okay, so call to action. I'm going to have a link here that is going to go to the about page. So let's go into about, let's go into our about folder and then get the about HTML. And this is going to say read more. And I'm going to duplicate this. This is going to say get in touch. And that will be going to the contact page. So that should be contact.html. And that is all we need for the header or the main header section here. All right, so let's get back to the index CSS. I'm going to grab the comments that I have up here, scroll down, paste it. This is going to be the main header. All right, so this is what we have so far. The text for the left side, of course, is heading below the navbar. Okay, because we positioned our navbar to be fixed, we have some things or some part of the main header below it. Okay, but we are going to style it and then push it down. As I already mentioned, CSS variables are really important. For instance, with the general container class that I set its width to be the container width LG, which is a variable up here. And as you can see, that is why we have that cool alignment. Okay, so every element that has a container class is going to be aligned. Okay, they are going to have some space on the left and some space on the right here as well. And that's going to be more obvious as we progress. But if I change this to, let's say, 30 or maybe 44%, let's see, you can see they all realign to match that. Okay, so CSS variables are very important. And even when it comes to building projects whereby you have a light and a dark theme, it gets more important, okay, or more useful. So just try as much as possible to be using CSS variables, and you're going to have an easy time with CSS. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and target the main header. And remember, we gave that a class of main header like this. I'm going to set the background. Come on, I'm going to set the background to be the color primary. Okay, I want a colorful background for this, so yeah, I'll set the height to be 110 viewport height. I'll make the display to be grid. I'll set it to grid and place items to the center. All right, nothing seems to change. That's because we haven't made any adjustment to our main header container. We are going to display that to be flex. And basically, I just want the left side and the right side to be aligned horizontally. They should be next to each other horizontally. Okay, so as you can see, that's what we have. But I'm going to align items to the center as well. That's vertical alignment to the center. And let's have a gap of 4 rem between them. So 4 times 16, that'll give you the value in pixels. And I'm going to give it a margin top of -6 rem. So instead of pushing it down, I'm going to push it up 6 pixels. Oh, sorry, 6 rems. Okay, so this is what we have. Perfect. Now let's move on and target the main header underscore left. So this side of the main header with the text content, I'm going to set the flex basis to be 50%, and that means this side should be 50%, okay, of the container. I'm going to do same for the right side. So 50 on the left, 50 on the right. Right. Now I'm going to target the H1 inside of the main header left. I'm going to set the color for that to be color gray 0. That's the white color. And also I'm going to target the paragraph. You know, there's a paragraph right here below the H1. I'm going to target that. This should be a class. So let me have the dot. Let's target the paragraph and give it a color of color gray 100. So it's visible now. And I'm actually going to increase the font size. So font size of 1.1 rem. All right, that's not bad. All right, now let's get the call to action. So main header left, CTA, that's the class I gave the div that wraps around the call to action links. So let's display that to be flex. I'll align items to the center, give it a gap of 1.5 rem and a margin top of 2 rem. Okay, now you don't really see anything because we are not making use of the general button class that we had. Okay, so we have a btn class here and a btn with another class of primary here that we showed use. So on the first one, I'm going to have a class of btn. If I save, this is what I have. Okay, so the styles for the btn are kicking in. And for the second link, I'm going to have btn and another class of primary. All right, so this is what we have for that as well. Perfect. Okay, so basically that is it for the styles for our main header, which is really easy, guys. So make sure you always extract all the repeating styles like buttons. You know, you can have the same styles for different buttons, like repeated styles for different buttons. You just extract those styles, the repeating styles, you put them in a class, and then you add that class to whatever elements that you want it to look like a button. Okay, so that is for the main header section. That is for the main header section. So now the next section is going to be the services section with those overlapping cards here, and that is what we are going to work on next. So let's get into, or let's get back into our HTML file, and I'm going to copy this comment. Right below the header, we are going to have our services section. All right, so this services section is going to be inside a section tag, and let's give this a class of services. Now let's have a div that's a direct child to the section tag, and of course it's going to have the container class and a services container class specific to this section or this div. And we are going to have two menus. Okay, the first menu is going to have 3 articles, and we are going to style it into 3 cards, and the second or the bottom one is going to have 2 menus. Okay, I just separated them to make the styling easier. All right, so let's have a menu here, and let's give that a class of services top. And actually, let me just duplicate this. So you have top and then bottom. Okay, let me separate this with a space. So for the top, as I said, we are going to have an article tag here. Let's give that a class of service. We are going to have an H4. First, let's have a span, sorry. and this pan is going to have an icon. Okay, so of course let's get back to Iconscout and search phone or mobile or whatever. I'm going to use this right here. I'll copy the tag and then paste it in here. Below that, we are going to have an H4, and I'll say core services. And below that, we are going to have a paragraph tag, and I'll just do lorem 11. That's actually too much, maybe lorem 10. So with Emmet, of course, you've seen me do this. I'll just do lorem 10 and then tab, and it's going to give me this dummy text. Okay, so I can go ahead and duplicate this article 2 more times. The next, or the second one, is going to be active warning, and so we should have a different icon for that. The third one is going to be health records. Okay, now let's get icons that matches those. So I'll just grab this. Cool, I'll just grab this for the second one. That's the active warning, and I'll just search health to see what I can get. You can use this or that, whichever icon make more sense to you. All right, so those are the 3 cards or the 3 articles that we need for the top, and it's going to be very similar to the bottom. Okay, it's all in the styling. I want only 2 articles in the bottom. That is why I separated them. So just copy and paste here, and this one is going to say, you know what, I'll say care plan. Okay, and then health records here. For the care plan, I'll use this. Maybe that makes more sense. For the health records, I'll leave it like that. And now for the last one, just copy this icon and then paste it right here. All right, so we save this, come back to our project, and this is what we have. Perfect. All our icons are here, and as you can see, we have a very nice styling for our headings as well. Okay, and that is with this. Okay, if we come back to our CSS, we had some styling for our headings right here. We gave them font sizes, different line heights, margin bottom, and all that. Okay, so general classes or general styles are very important. All right, so that's for the HTML for our services section. Let's move on to the styling or the CSS. Of course, we should have a comment here. Services section. Perfect. And now let's style this. Now, what I want to do is I want the services section to seem like it overlaps or it sits a little bit on top of the main header section. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to have a negative margin for the top. Okay, so let's target the services section and give it a margin top of -8 rem. Right, so we save, and you can see we have some parts of the services section on the main header section, right? But I'm going to give it a margin bottom as well of, let's do 8 rem for the bottom. Okay, perfect. Now let's target the services top. That's the part with the 3 article elements. Okay, so I'm going to display that to be grid, and the grid template columns here is going to be, this can be tricky if you are not used to it, so I'll make this bigger so that you see everything clearly. I'm going to repeat autofill. Okay, so automatically fill the remaining space, but the minimum and the maximum is going to be 15 rem for the minimum and then 1 fr for the maximum. Okay, and I hope that makes sense. So each element in the services top, or each child in the services top, is going to have a minimum width of 15 rem and a maximum of 1 rem. Okay, so if there is enough space, it's going to increase to fill that space. You can go ahead and read more about autofill, or even about grid systems so that you understand this better. All right, now let's go ahead, and I'm going to have a gap of 6 rems between the elements. Okay, so far we have these. Okay, now let's target them and give them a better look. So the articles, let's give them a background of color gray 100, a text align of center, a pattern of 2 rem, a border of 0.5 rem solid color gray 0, and I'm going to have a hover effect. So let's give it a transition of the variable transition. Now we save, come back, and this is what we have. Perfect. Right, now let's have the hover effect. I'm going to have a cool hover effect for this. So on hover of the articles, I want them to move a little bit up. Okay, so let's translate on the y-axis, that's the vertical axis, since I want them to move a little vertically or a little up, and they are going to move -1 rem. Okay, and that will push them a little bit up. So if I hover, I have this, which is really cool. Okay, now I want the border color to change as well. So I want them to have the color variant, and the cursor is going to be default, and I want them to have a box shadow as well of 0 for the x-axis, 3 rem for the y-axis, a blur of 2 rem, and an RGBA for the color. It's going to be black with 10% alpha, so 0.1. Okay, so we save this, and now we have this cool effect. All right, now let's target the icon. Okay, let's target the icon. So let's get the service, or sorry, the services article, and then come on, the icon that is inside the span. So let's give that a background of color primary variant, a color or a text color of color gray 0, a margin bottom of 1.5 rem, a border radius of 50%, a height of 4.5 rem, and I'm going to have an aspect ratio of 1:1, and this means the height should always match the width. So if in the future I come back and then change the height to, let's say, 2 rem, the width is also going to match it. So basically it's going to make it a perfect circle, since we've set the border radius to be 50, right? That's what we have so far. Wait, let me save it. Okay, and it's not really showing, or it's not really taking effect, because we have to give it a different display. Therefore I'm going to display it to be flex. Okay, so now you can see it's actually happening, and I'm going to align items to the center, and also to justify content to the center as well. All right, so we have the icon in the middle. Now let's increase it with a font size of 2.2 rem. And lastly, I want to push it here, okay, in the middle of the card. So I'm going to set margin inline of auto. So margin on the x-axis should be auto, and that's what we have. Okay, perfect. So now you can see the bottom is also having, or is also being styled, and that is very intentional. I don't want to get to the bottom, that's the service bottom, and also have the same styles for that. Okay, so that's it. Right now let's target the bottom and then just have a few lines. So that's the services bottom. The margin top is going to be 6 rem. I'm going to display that to be grid as well. The grid template columns is going to be repeat, autofill, min max of 20 rem for the minimum and then 1 rem for the maximum. All right, a gap of 6 rem, and boom, we have this. Now I'm going to target the article, that's the card itself, for the bottom. Okay, not the hover, come on. We have the hover effect already, but I just want to target the article itself. Let's give that a background of color gray 100. A pattern of 3 rem for the top and bottom, 4 rem for the left and right. Text align off center. There should be pattern. I'm going to give it a border 0.5 rem, solid color gray 0, and a transition as well of the variable transition. So we are basically done with the wait a minute, for the hover effect, instead of services top, I'll do services so that the hover effect works for the bottom as well. Okay, and if we want, we can actually for the article style, I could not be so specific here, just so this takes effect for the bottom as well. So instead of having all these lines for this right here, I could delete all these and only have it for the different pattern. Okay, I want this to look a little spacious, so that is the only one I have. That's for the pattern. Okay, I hope this makes sense. All right, so that is for the services section of our website. That is for the services section. Okay, that is for the services section, and this is looking really cool. And the next section we have to move on to is going to be the footer section. Okay, so let's quickly move on to that. Let me copy this comments, come back down here, paste it. There's going to be for the footer. Perfect. Let's have the footer in a footer tag. Let's have our container class and another class of footer container, and a sibling of this div or this container div is going to be a small tag that is going to say copyright and copy. That's the copy symbol that I'm looking for. 2024 EGATOR tutorials. All right, now in the container class, we are going to have an added list or unordered list with a class of footer socials, and this is going to have our social media links, and the sibling of this is going to be a menu with anchor tags that are going to lead to the other pages as well, just like we have in the navbar. Okay, so actually I'm just going to go back up here and I'm going to copy these links into our menu here. Okay, so I just paste this, but here I don't need the active class on any of them. Right now, for the footer socials, let's have our list items here. Each of them is going to have a link inside of it. The first one is going to go to Twitter. Okay, so if you have a Twitter handle, you can go ahead and have that in the href and have that in the href, that is x.com. But I'm going to give this a target of _blank so that on click of this, it opens in a new tab in the browser. Okay, we have to get the Twitter icon here, so just search Twitter, come back and then paste it in the anchor tag. Right, so we have our Twitter. I'll just duplicate the li a few more times, maybe 4 more times, and the next one is going to be LinkedIn, so linkedin.com. The third one is going to be dribble.com. we'll have facebook.com, and lastly Instagram. Okay, so just go ahead and search those icons. Very easy, just search them and then paste them in here. So that is Instagram. We have what? Dribble. Right here, you just copy the link, sorry, the tag. Okay, so that's Facebook. We need dribble. Paste it. I should search Facebook. Perfect. I'll just copy. So for the Facebook icon, I'll just paste this. We need LinkedIn as well. LinkedIn right here. We just paste it. Okay, so basically that is all for the footer section. Okay, that is all for our footer section. Actually, I'm just going to say our works. Okay, so I'll come back here, our works. Okay, all right, so that's for the footer section. Let's come back to the CSS and style our footer. So from the HTML so far, this is what we have from the footer section. Let's quickly give this some styling. Let's get the footer tag, and since this is the only footer tag we have in the entire project, we don't need to give it any class. We can just directly get the tag. Okay, so let's give that a background of the variant. Come on. Okay, so we have that. Perfect. Now I'm going to get the footer socials. Okay, and I'll display that to be flex, align items to the center, justify content to be center as well. I'll give a gap of 1 rem and a padding top of 7 rem. Okay, so we have this. Now I'm going to target the links. so that actually, let me just move this up. Okay, that makes more sense. So footer socials, I'll get the links and give them a background color primary, color of color gray 0 or the white color, font size of 0.9 rem, border radius of 50%, width of 2.4 rem, the height is going to be 2.4 rem as well. I'm going to give it a display of flex just so I can align items to the center and justify content to the center as well. So we save, and this is what we have. Perfect. All right, now I'm going to have a hover effect, so I'll set the transition to be the variable transition, so we can go ahead and footer socials a hover on the background to be black or the very dark color, that's color gray 400, and I want it to move a little bit up just like we had for the services cards. So I'm going to transform and translate on the y-axis negative 0.5 rem. Okay, so we hover and we have this. Perfect. All right, now let's get the footer menu. That is this. Okay, so footer menu, we are going to display flex here, align items to the center, justify to the center as well, gap of 2.5 rem, margin of 2.5 rem for the top and bottom, and then 0 for the left and right. I'm going to get the footer menu and the link or the links inside of that. Let's give them a color of color gray 0, that's the white. I'm going to give them a font weight of 500. They're going to have a hover effect. So let's give it a transition of the variable transition. Now for the hover, I'll just change the color to be color primary. All right, so we hover and we have that. All right, now last thing to style is this copyright that we have at the bottom here. And so let's get the footer, and that's the only small tag inside. So let's change the color to color gray 100. The background color primary, text align to the center. I'll give it a padding of 1 rem and a width of 100%, and also I'll display block. Okay, so we save this, and this is what we have for our footer. Perfect. All right, so we are basically done with the large screen or the desktop version of our homepage. I think the next thing we want to do is to make sure this is actually responsive, and that means we should make sure it looks good on smaller devices before we even move on to the other pages. Okay, before we get to the media queries or the responsiveness, I want to have a custom scroll bar here. Okay, so let's get to the CSS. Way up top before the body, I'm going to have some styles for our scroll bar. So let's get the bucket scroll bar. Let's give it a width, reduce the width to about 0.6 rem, and the background color, I'm going to change that as well. Color gray 200 should be good. All right, or maybe the color primary variant, maybe that should be, yeah, that's perfect. And also I'm going to get the thumb. the scroll bar thumb, right? And let's give that a background of color primary, and that's what we need. Okay, so now we have a custom scroll bar. Perfect. Okay, so that is it for the large screen, and now let's move on to actually make this responsive. Okay, I'm going to copy this comment, come back down here, paste it, media queries for small common devices, right? So here we just say at media screen and max width of 600 pixels. Okay, so any device that has a width of below 600 pixels should have the styles that we are going to put in here. Okay, so first of all, the general container class, I'm going to give that a different width on small devices, and that is going to be the variable container width SM. Okay, so now we save and we have some change, but we should go on. And the btn class as well, I'm going to give that a pattern of 1.2 for the left, sorry, for the top and bottom, and then 1 point, sorry, this should be rem, and then 1.5 for the left and right. Perfect. Now let's target the headings. The h1, I'm going to reduce the font size to 2.6 rem. The h2 is going to have a font size of 2.4 rem, or maybe 2.3. Yep, that's cool. The h3 is going to be 2 rem. The h4 1.5 rem, and then the h5 1.1 rem. So that's what we have. You can see some difference in the h1 that we have here, right? So let's move on and target the nav bar. Now for the nav bar, let's get the nav menu straight away. Give it a position of fixed. It's going to be 0 from the right, and from the top is going to be 4 rem. Okay, and I'm giving it 4 rem from the top because I want it to be right below the nav bar. Okay, like the height of the nav bar, if that makes sense. Now let's actually give it a flex direction of color. Remember, the nav menu is already displayed flex, but here we are just changing the flex direction to be column, and I'm going to reduce the gap to be 0. Okay, so I save this, and now we have this, and that's our nav menu. Perfect. All right, I'll come back to actually display it none. So initially when we visit the page, is not going to show, but on click of the icon that we hit before, we will be able to actually show it. Okay, right, so let's target the links inside the nav menu and give them a background of color gray 300. Give them a width of 15 rem. Give them a height of 5 rem. Let's display them to be flex and justify content to be center. Also align items to the center as well. Let me actually give them a border top of 1 pixel solid color gray 400. Right, now let's save this and see what we have. Perfect. I want it to actually stand out from the background, so let's give it a box shadow of -1 rem for the x-axis, 3 rem for the y-axis, 2 rem for the blur, and an RGBA of black with 30% alpha. Okay, so that's what we have. Now let's see. That's cool. We can move on, and I'm going to target the buttons. Okay, the icons that we had here. That's the menu icon or the menu button and the close button as well. We are going to show them now. That's the nav. Actually, I'm only going to show the open one. Okay, so the nav, we gave that a class of nav menu open. If you can remember, in the nav we had 2 buttons, one with a class of nav menu open, and that's what I'm targeting now. We displayed them none, or we hid them on live devices, but here we need them, so I'm going to display it in line block here. Okay, so now you can see it. All right, so let's see. That is it for the nav menu, and as I said, I'm actually going to hide it, so I'm going to display it none initially, but we are going to use JavaScript to actually toggle it. Okay, so let's leave that for now and move on. Let's get the main header container, and on small devices I'm going to change the flex direction to be column and give a gap of 1.5 rem. I'm also going to give it a padding of 12 rem for the top and bottom, and then 0 for the left and right. So I save, and that's what I have. Perfect. Now let me get the main header left CTA. I'm going to give that a gap of 1.2 rem between the buttons or the links. Now let's target let's move on to the services section. So let's get the services top and also the services bottom, and I'm going to reduce the gap to be 2 rem. Okay, yep, now we have that. Now let's get the footer menu. So footer with the menu, I'm going to change the flex direction to be column. Let's scroll so that you see what I'm talking about right here. So you can see we have them in the column. Let's have a gap of 1.5 rem and a margin of 3.5 rem for the top and bottom, and then 0 for the left and right. All right, so now this is what we have. Okay, this is what we have for the media query for small devices. Right, perfect. All right, so the next thing I want to do is to actually make sure we can show and hide our nav menu on small screens. Okay, so to achieve that, of course, we are going to use JavaScript, and so we should make sure our JavaScript file right here is linked to our HTML. So at the bottom, right before the closing body tag, I'm going to have a script tag, and the source is going to be our main.js. Okay, so let's go into our JavaScript file. So achieving this with JavaScript is very, very easy, right? What do we need to do? First of all, we need to get this item, that is the bar icon or the bar button that we have here. We need to get that. We need to get the nav menu as well, and we need to get the close, okay, the close button as well, right? Once we have all 3 of these elements, then we are going to say, okay, when we click on this, we need to show, or we want to show the nav menu. Okay, and once we click on this, we want to remove this, that's the button here, and then replace it with the close button. Okay, so let's just do it so that you understand what I'm talking about. Let's get the nav menu, and document.query selector is going to do that for us. So we just give the class of nav menu, right? I'll duplicate this twice. So we have the nav menu. We are going to get the nav open btn, and that is the nav open btn that we have right here. Wait a minute, let's go up top. Remember, we have nav menu open. Okay, so that's that's the class I gave it. So nav menu open, and that's going to be nav menu close, right? Nav close btn. Okay, right. So once we have these three elements, let's get the nav open btn and add an event listener to that. That's going to be a click event, and on click we are going to run this anonymous function. And what we want to do, as I said, we want to show the nav menu. So nav menu dot style dot display is going to be equal to flex. Okay, so let's try this. We come and then we click on this, and boom, we have our nav menu showing. Beautiful. It's just as simple as that. All right, so as I said, we need to remove the nav open btn. Okay, we need to hide it, and that's going to be a display of none. Okay, so once we hide that, we need to get the nav close btn and give it a display of inline block, right? And I hope that makes sense. So we come here again, we click, and we have the nav menu, and now the bar icon or the bar button has been replaced with the close button. All right, and to close it too is going to be the reverse of this. So I'll just duplicate this and put an event listener on the nav close btn, and on click, this time the nav menu is going to be none. That's the display. This is going to be displayed inline block, and this is going to be displayed none. It's just this simple, guys. All right, so now I'm going to go back. Right, so now I'll just click to show it, and we have our beautiful nav menu, and I'll just click again to hide it. It is just this simple. So now we've been able to add the closing and showing functionality of our nav menu on mobile or small devices. So the next thing we need to do is to work on the different pages, the other pages that we have. Okay, so starting with the works page, what I'm going to do is to cut the parts of the pages that are going to repeat itself, and I think from the nav upwards is going to repeat on all the pages. So I'm just going to copy that and then paste it here in the works. Okay, and at the bottom too, from the footer downwards is going to repeat on all the pages. So I'll just copy that as well and then paste it here at the bottom here. Okay, and once I have that, I'll just copy everything here in the works and then paste it in the about and the contact pages as well. So I'll just paste here. There's the contact, and actually, to be more specific on which page we are on, each title is going to have the name of the page. Okay, so I have contact and then the actual title. So I should do same for the works as well. So works, and then we have it. And lastly, for the about, I'm going to paste what I copied and then change or add about here. All right, so now if we go to the about page, you can see we have something. Okay, now the CSS is not actually well linked because we are in a different folder and we have to link it well, which we are going to do in a second. but as you can see, we have the content. Okay, now let's go to the works. So we click on our works, and that is also not well linked because we have to adjust the linking of the other files on the different pages. Okay, so let me actually go ahead and do that right now. Well, let's see, starting from the CSS link. Remember, we are currently in the works HTML file, which is in another folder. Okay, so what we need to do to locate this index CSS is to go up one more folder. Okay, so go back into the main project, and then we can access the index.css. But that aside, we also need to link our CSS file, that is the CSS file specific to this works.html file, if that makes sense. Okay, so remember we have works.css file. We have to link that to this file as well, this HTML file. So works.css, right? And that is going to have only one dot because we are in the same folder. Okay, this HTML file is a sibling to this CSS file. But for the index CSS, we have to go back up into the main folder. Okay, one folder up before we can locate it. I hope that makes sense, guys. So with that aside, for the index HTML as well, we have to go back up one more folder, and that is going to be for the about. So we go back into the main project, we enter the about folder, and then we can get the about HTML, right? Same for this, and same for this as well. Now we have to come down to wherever we imported other files. So in this case, in the footer, we have to do the same thing here, right? And now this should be perfect. So even for the JavaScript, we have to go back up. Okay, so that is it for the corrections we need to do here. And now I'm going to copy all this again, and then I remove everything I pasted in the about, and then paste the new corrections that I just made. Right, so this is going to be the about, and we are going to need the about CSS file here instead. I'll do same for the contact. So this is going to say contact. You will need the contact CSS file, and what else? Yeah, I guess that's it. Nope, of course this should be the contact, right? So even here, and I think, yeah, for the works, of course, since we are in the same folder, it should be only one. And for the footer as well, there should be only one. Guys, the video just stopped, or the recording tool that I'm using just stopped. So I just hope I'm back on track. Okay, yeah. So yeah, since we have this, let's see, I'll just copy everything that we have here, and then in the about, I'm going to paste that, and in here, of course, this is going to be the about. I'll say about. There's going to be only one. That's for the about, since we are in the about folder and we are trying to get the about. You know what, we are not going into any other folder. Okay, so for the works as well, I'll just remove the folder, and the folder as well will do same. I hope that makes sense, guys. I hope that makes sense. If you want, you can just do this, and that just means bring me to the top of the page. Okay, that's the current page that you're on. So in this case, for the about, instead of about HTML, I could do this, right? I hope that makes sense. But I just want the whole page to refresh. And that is why I'm trying to get the same file that I'm in. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So I wouldn't have to go up into the main project before locating the works. Although it would work, it doesn't really make sense, right? I just want to get the file that I'm in, okay? And that's how to do it. All right, so for the about, I think that is it. So of course we should go up for this one. And yeah, I hope this not too boring. Now we can copy, come on. Now we can copy everything in here and then paste it in the contact. So for the contact, I'll just get the contact, and here too I'll do same. I'll get the contact CSS, and this would say contact. All right, so let's save this. And right, as I said, the project stopped, so I'll have to restart this. Yeah, let me restore this. Okay, so now you can see we are currently on the contact, and as you can see, we should have the active class on the contact since we are on the contact page. So I'll come back here and I'll give the active class to the contact link. I'll just cut it and then put it on the contact. And for the about, I'll do same. I'll just cut the active class from the home and then put it on the about link. And I'll do same for the works as well. So for the works, I'll give it the active class and remove it from the home. All right, so now we have the active class on the contact since you're on the contact page. As you can see, if we go to the works, as you can see, we are on the works page, and then we have the active class on it. For the about, we have the active class, and for home, we have the active class. Perfect. So now we should move on to work on the other pages, and we are going to start with the simplest one, and that is going to be the works. Okay, so I'm going to close all these, and I'm going to open the works CSS alongside the works HTML and the main index.css. Okay, and when you are linking the CSS files, make sure the index CSS comes before the works CSS. Okay, so for the about page as well, make sure the index CSS comes first. Okay, so that all the styles that you have loads from the CSS, sorry, from the index, and then you continue with your styles that is particular to the page that you are currently working on. So any style that you want to overwrite in the work CSS is going to be properly overwritten. Okay, right below the nav bar or the nav tag, we are going to have a section. I don't even need to have any comment here. I just have a section tag with a class of works. I have our general container class, and actually I'll give it another class of works __ container. And in here we are going to have a div with an image. Okay, so let's go into our images or our assets folder and get our first project image. So project 1.png. You can give it an alt if you want, so you can just say project 1, and then we are going to duplicate this div 7 times. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. So in all we have 8 divs, right? So let's get the second image, and these are the images from the assets. Okay, so we have project 1 2 3 up to project 8, right? So those are the images we are getting. We have project 3 4 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, I'm not ready to make sure everything is typed well. I'll just leave every mistake as it is. There's 3 and then 2. Perfect. All right, this is all we need, guys. This is all we need. We are just going to show some images on the works page. That's all. Let's get the works and give it a padding of 10 rem for the top, 0 for the left and right, and then 6 rem for the bottom. Okay, so yeah, perfect. As you can see, these are the images that we have. Okay, let me actually make this smaller so that we see what's happening. Right, so let's get the works container, give it a display of grid template columns is going to be repeat, autofill, min max of 13 rem, and then 1 fr. So we save, and this is what we have. Now let's have a gap of 2.5 rem. I mean, if you want, you can just leave it without a gap, but I think they look better with a gap. Okay, let's get the div. That's the div that wraps around each of the images. So works container and then the div. We are going to make them less saturated. Actually, we are going to make them black and white. Okay, and on hover of any of them, we are going to make them colored as you see them right now. So we are going to say filter saturate of 0. Okay, they are going to have no saturation, thereby making them look black and white. And since we are going to have a hover effect, I'm going to give it that transition hover effect here. So on hover, I just want the saturation to be back to normal, that is 1, or you can make it 100%. And I also want to transform and scale it a little bit. Let's say 1.2. Okay, right, so we hover and we have this cool effect. Perfect. All right, now let's make this responsive. This is not going to look good. Okay, because of the autofill that we gave it, it's actually not looking too bad. The min max for the grid that we gave it, but we should still have some media query. So I'll say media, or at media screen and max width of 600 pixel. The works container is going to have a gap of 1.6 rem. I don't want that hover effect on small screens, so the works container div on hover, I don't want the scale. Okay, so transform scale is going to be 0, sorry, 1, so it will remain the same size, if that makes sense. All right, so now we hover and we don't get that scaling, although we have the saturation effect. It's only the scaling that we don't want here. Okay, so that is actually it for the works page, and now we can move on to the next page. I just want to work on the about page right away, so let's move on to the about page real quick. I'll just close the assets, go into the about HTML and open the about CSS as well. For the about as well, this is going to be very simple. So let's have a section with a class of about. We are going to have our container class and about container class as well. Now in here we are going to have a header with a class of about header, and let's have an h2 that says about me or about us, whatever. Let's actually make it about us. Okay. Yep. Below that I'm going to have a paragraph, and let's just do lorem 22. Okay, maybe that's too much, so I'll delete some of this, or let's just keep it. Okay, so that's for the header. Below that I'm going to have a div with a class of about content, and in here we are going to have a left and a right. Okay, so just like we had in the main header, we are going to have a div about content left. I'll duplicate this, and this is going to be the right. And for the right, this is just going to be, or we are just going to have an image. So let's go into our assets. So you do dot dot forward slash, that's we go up one level into the main folder, and then we get our assets folder, and inside this we will have the about gif, okay, or the gif, right? So they just about image, and so that is for the right side. Now for the left side we are going to have an h3, and that will say a brief about us, right? Below the h3 we are going to have some paragraphs, and so you can do lorem 30 for the first one. Below that you can do another paragraph, and then lorem 18 maybe, and then right below that you can have another paragraph and do lorem maybe 26. Yeah, right, just some dummy content. Okay, right, so let me actually make this more than that, so 45, and that's it. Okay, so that is it for our HTML for our about section. Okay, that is it. That's all we need. Let's move on to the CSS. First, let's see what we have so far. Yep, there is what we have so far. Okay, there's what we have so far for the about. So we should go ahead and make this look good. Okay, you can see some of the content is behind the navbar and all of that. All right, so let's move on to the CSS. I'll make this smaller so that we can see everything that's happening. Right away, I'm going to get the about section and give it a margin of 7 rem for the top and bottom, and then 0 for the left and right. Let's get the about header, and I'm just going to text align to be center. All right, so we have that. Now let's get the content, about content. Okay, so about underscore content. We are going to display flex and have a gap of 3 rem between them. All right, so we have this, and let's grab the left side, so about content, and then the left, which has this text. We are going to give that a flex basis of 50%. Okay, so it should take 50% width of its parent, right? And I'm going to give it a background of color gray 100, and give it a padding of 4 rem. All right, so we save this, what we have. Perfect. You know what, I'm going to remove this gap. Let me actually give it a margin top instead of 3 rem. Okay, not a gap. I don't want any gap between these two elements. All right, so that is for the about content left. Now I'm going to get this h3 and have some more space between that and the paragraphs that we have here. So about content left, and then the h3. I'm going to give it a margin bottom of 1.2 rem. I'm actually going to get the paragraphs here. So about content left, and the paragraphs, I'm going to give them a margin bottom as well of 0.6 rem. Okay, or maybe 0.8. Yep, that's perfect. All right, now let's get the right. That is the GIF or the GIF that we have here. So about content, and then the right, I'm going to give it a flex basis of 50%, a padding of 4 rem, and I'm going to give it a background because, okay, let me show you real quick. Without a background, this is how it's going to look like. Okay, so I just want to give it a background. This all parts, this piece here around it is all parts of the right side. Okay, so we just have to give it a background that matches this white so that it fills in the space, right? So let's give it that white background that we have. That is the color gray 0. Okay, so we do that, and now background color gray 0. All right, so that's what we have. Okay, perfect. All right, so that is it for the about page, but of course we have to make this responsive. So let's see how this is going to look on small screens, and it doesn't look good. Wait a minute, what's happening here? What is going on? Okay, we have a problem with the link in the about, so let's make sure we correct that. Of course, that is the logo. You have to go into the main and then get that index HTML. I hope that makes sense. We are in the about page, which is in a subfolder, right? So we have to go back into the main folder before we get the index HTML, right? I made a mistake there. I hope you corrected yours. So now if I click, we should be taken to the home page. Now let's go back into the about and let's make sure that it's responsive. So about, let's have a media query. I'm not going to leave any comment here. So a media screen and max width 600 pixels. I'm going to have the about content flex direction set to column. Wait a minute. Flex direction column, right? Perfect. So this is what we have. Now we just have to reduce the pattern that we have here. So the about content left and the about content right, both of them, I'm going to give them a padding of 2 rem for the top and bottom, and then 1 rem for the left and right. Okay, so that is it, and I think that's all we need for our responsiveness. Okay, for this about page, that is all we need. All right, so we have the home, we have the about, everything is looking amazing, and there's a GIF, okay, or a GIF. That is why when we refresh and to right here, you can see we have this little animation. Okay, now we should move on to the next page. Okay, we have the works page done already, so the last page remaining is the contacts page. Okay, so let's move on to that real quick and let's get this project done with. Let's move on to the the contact HTML. Let's open the CSS as well. Perfect. We are going to have a section. Let's give it a class of contact. You have our container class and a contact container class as well here. Let's have an h2 that says contact me, right? Maybe we should have a paragraph below that. Let's do lorem 8 or lorem 9 or 10 even. Yeah. Okay, and so below the paragraph, you are going to have our form. Okay, let's have a form. I don't need any action, but I'm just going to leave it. Let's have a div. These are all necessary attributes that you should have on your tags, but for this project, I'm not going to. We are just going to ignore them. You have a label and an input. Now the type is going to be text. That's the default. And I'm just going to duplicate this about 3 more times. So we have first name, we are going to have last name, email. So the type is going to be email, and we'll have message. Actually, there's going to be a text area instead of an input. So let's have a text area, and we'll say a message, right? And below that, we are going to have a button, okay, with a type of submit. And it's just going to say send message. Right now, since we have our button class, we can give this a btn and a primary class as well, and that is it. Okay, this is all we need for our contact. Okay, so let's enter the css and let's make sure this looks good. This is what we have so far from the html, right? So let's make sure we style this. Let's get our contact section and give it a margin top of 4 rem. Give it a pattern of 5 rem for the top, 0 for the left and right, and then 7 rem for the bottom. Let's give it a background of color primary and display grid, just so I can place items to the center. Okay, so boom, this is what we have. Perfect. Now let's get the container. That is the contact container, and give it a width of 36 rem. All right, if I should give this a background, you should see what I'm talking about. Okay, so this is the width we are giving to our container, and we displayed the contact section to be grid, and we placed item to the center, and that's why we have the direct child, which is this contact container right in the middle, okay, of the section. Perfect. All right, that's all for the container. Now let's move on and get the contact h2 and the contact p, right? And I'm just going to give them a color of color gray 0. That's a white color. That's all we need, right? All right, so let's get the form. Did I give it any class? No. But let's get the form and give it a background of color gray. It's going to be 100. Let's give it a padding of 4 rem. What is going on? A padding of 4 rem, a margin top of 2 rem, a display flex, and flex direction of column. All right, so we have that. Let's get the contact label and give it a color of color gray 400. And that's all I need here. I'll get the input and the text area and make this wider, okay, or longer. Let's get the contact input and the contact text area. All right, and give it a width of 100%, padding of 1 rem, margin of 0.4 rem for the top, 0 for the left and right, and then 1 rem for the bottom. Let's save, and boom, we have this. Right now, I don't want it to. Let me show you something real quick. You see this? We can actually resize it however we want. Okay, and this not cool. I don't want this, right? So I'm going to say resize none, and also I'm going to give it a background of color gray 200. All right, now let's go ahead and get the button. I want it to look like the background. Okay, I want it to have that primary color. So let's get a button, and we gave it a BTN class as well. So let's target that, and it has a BTN class as well. That's why I'm making sure we select it right. Let's give it a primary background, and the text color is going to be color gray 0, or the white color. And now we have this. Perfect. All right, so I think our contact page is also done. It's looking amazing, and so we probably should move on to the media queries right away. So let's see how this is going to look. Okay, we just have some few adjustments to make here. So at media screen and max width of 600 pixels, I want the contact container to have a width of the variable container with SM. Okay, contact container, yep, right. So that is it. And also I'm going to get the contact and then the form and give it a padding of 3 rem for the top and bottom, and then 1 rem for the left and right. Now let's make sure we refresh this, and boom, this is what we have. What is happening? Padding. Nice. Okay, so we have this. All right, so that is it for the contact page as well. Okay, so this problem is on every other page, right? That's my bad, guys. We should make sure we go back into the main and get the index. Okay, and I think we did the same mistake. We made the same mistake with the works page as well, right? We go up into the main project and then we get the index. Perfect. All right, so I'll click again, and now we should be, wait a minute, let me refresh first. Click, and we are in the home page. Beautiful. All right, so that is all, guys. That is all for the project. That is all for this project. We should make sure this goes live on the internet as well. So the next thing we have to do is to, okay, so we have the same problem with the footer. Oh my god, guys. So we are in the works. This shouldn't be happening in the works. We have the contact. Let's see. Sorry, yeah, the contact. So in the contact, this should rather be this only. Oh, okay. I have to go into the about folder, guys. So about folder first before the about. And right here, let's see. There's the about. So you go into the contact works. Okay, great. And here to go into the about, go into the contacts. Perfect. All right, so that's it. Let me refresh this once again and try going to the about, and now we get to the about page. I'm sorry, this happens when programming, so that's pretty normal. All right, so that's it for the project. Now, as I said, we have to make sure this is live on the internet so that everyone around the world can visit. So let's move on to putting this website on the internet, or deploying our website onto the internet. So now that we have everything done locally, we have to make sure it can be accessible online. Okay, we have to deploy our website or upload our website files on the internet so that everyone around the world can have access to it. So in the beginning of the video, if you can remember, we bought our hosting, and Hostinger gave us a free domain name. Okay, so if you haven't already, make sure you use the timestamp in the description to buy your hosting and then get your free domain name. You also get a free SSL, as you're going to see once we finish the deployment. All right, so this is our main project. This is the project folder. We have our about, our assets, contacts, works, and then our index, which is the home page. All right, so what we are going to do here is to create a new folder. You can call it whatever you want. I'm going to leave it at new folder, and I'm going to select everything but that new folder. Okay, so I'm going to invert this selection, and I'm going to copy all these folders and files into that new folder that I just created. Okay, so we have everything in here. Okay, and the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm going to compress this new folder. So I'll right click and then compress or zip this folder, and this file, this zip file right here, is what we are going to upload to our Hostinger server. All right, so make sure you log into your Hostinger H panel. All right, so I'm going to log in right here. And once you log in, you are going to see business web hosting here. You click on manage, and you select the domain that you claimed. Okay, in the beginning of the video, during the purchase of the hosting, I claimed a different domain, but I'm using that for something else. So I'm going to use this. It is the same process, so just follow along, and by the end, you are going to have your website live on the internet. All right, so once you have the domain selected, go ahead and click File Manager. Now click on the public HTML, double click, and you should have some files and folders here. Okay, go ahead and select the first one at the top, and hold shift and select the last one at the bottom. Okay, and go ahead and delete them or trash them. Once you have them all deleted, go ahead and click on this upload, select file, and locate the file that you compressed. Okay, that is inside the build and host folder, and I'm going to select this zip file, the file that we compressed. I'm going to double click that, and we are going to have that uploaded. Once you have that uploaded, go ahead and click on it and extract it. So we are going to click extract, and we are extracting it here in the public HTML. So you can do dot and then click extract. We have that extracted. We can delete the zip file. We are not going to need it again. Let's go into the folder that we just extracted and select everything and move them into the public HTML. Okay, so we are going back up into the public HTML, as you can see here, and we've moved everything into the public HTML. So now this new folder should have nothing in it. Okay, so let's go ahead and delete that folder, the new folder, and everything here in the public HTML should look the same as we had when we completed the project. Okay, so everything here should look the same as we have in the public HTML. Okay, so that is it. We have our website live now. So if we should copy this link, in your case, it is going to be the domain that you claimed. If you should copy that or type that in the URL and you visit this website, we should be able to see our website live. And as you can see, we have a free SSL, and that means our website is secure. All right, so everything should work exactly the same as it did for the offline or when we were creating the website. Everything should work exactly the same. All right, that is it for the entire tutorial. Make sure you subscribe and like this video, and I'm going to see you in the next one.